Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics. I'm Evil Mike, and I got a review for you today. We're going to be talking about from Image Comics, Local Man, issue number 1. It is created, written, and some art by Tim Seeley, and then art by Tony Fleecs, and then colors by Brad Simpson. I'm not sure who does the letters. It might be Tim Seeley or Tony Fleecs, or maybe both, because they both had a hand in the art. It does say when you open the book that the third gen art is done by Tim Seeley, with colors by Felipe Sobrerio, and then Farmington art by Tony Fleecs and Brad Simpson. It's kind of mixed, and we'll get into it why. Before I get started, please like, comment, subscribe on Evil's Comics channel. You know, it does help. I love the interaction, especially on the book we're talking about. You know, if you read it, let me know down below what you thought. So let's get into the review, right? It is a flip book. This is cover B, and actually, I'm sorry, this is cover B, and this is actually the back. Like I said, it's a flip book. But I actually started out with this side first. I want to say it's probably the side you should start with, but like I said, it is a flip book. Around like halfway, it like the art and everything changes, and to read it you actually have to flip it over. So it starts out, and we're with our main character. His name is Jack Xavier, at this point formerly known as Crossjack. He got dropped off in like the middle of this, on the outskirts of this town called Farmington, hence what they were talking about, the Farmington art. But he's basically trying to get a ride back to town. It's not even like a random ride. He called Uber. The Uber's on his way to drive. It's not Uber, but something like that, Lyft, Uber. But he's actually at a bus stop. The bus stop has not come in hours. He finally did an Uber. The Uber came, and he's like, "Hey, aren't you Crossjack?" He's like, "Yeah, I am." And then the guy instantly is like, "Hey, fuck you, Crossjack," and he just drives away. The guy's like, well, I guess I'll Uber somebody else. And before the guy, he's like, "There's nobody else, see ya," and then he drives away. So basically they show Crossjack having to walk 10 miles, which, and you know, superhero world is probably not that bad. 10 miles, you know, I walk 10 miles a lot. Most of us do if you're watching your step counters, you know, that kind of stuff. Anyways, he finally does make it to Farmington, to the location he was supposed to be going to, and it's his mom and dad's house. He gets here, and it's kind of a weird situation. It's 8:30 at night. His parents had already eaten earlier. Evidently he's late because he couldn't get a ride. His parents make it seem like he's supposed to know all this, that the bus hadn't been running in years, you know, that it was hard to get into town, you know, and he was like, "Look, I got dropped outside of town, so it wouldn't make a big deal." But basically he starts to try to eat dinner. Before he can, we are introduced to Pepper, the invincible dog, which he's titled like 3 or 4 times during the book. But it's because of his longevity. He's been alive since Crossjack was a little kid, and he's still alive to this day. But basically there's during the dinner conversation, it's brought up something they're not supposed to talk about with you know, Jack Xavier. Something he did while he was with, or being a supergroup. Eventually some things get brought up by his mom, and she's like, "Why can't you just join another, you know, supergroup?" And she does mention some other teams, like what about the Brigade, Cyberforce? But he states, "Well, I'm not cyber, so I can't join the Cyberforce." There is like a cut scene where he's kind of thinking about the past, because that's him, and he's thinking about this girl, which we find out later on her name is Neon, or her superhero name. But eventually he kind of gets pissed. His dad kind of, you know, pissed, and he starts to leave, taking his dinner with him, because he doesn't want to be, you know, bombarded by all this stuff about what happened and why he's here currently. Maybe he just wanted to sit down and eat and then get to the topic at hand, but they're just kind of bombarding him as soon as he comes in the door. Plus that he's got a cold shoulder from the town since he's got there. His dad eventually stops him right before he leaves, and he's like, "You want to know why the world hates you?" And he was like, "It's because we gave you something extra special. We didn't even know we gave it to you, but we did. And what you do with it, this is what you did with it." And then after that, Crossjack, he just slams the door. They show a scene where he tries to go out on the town. He goes to a bar. He tries to play some darts with some guys, and some guys are like, "Nah, man, you're Crossjack, and you're a third genner." They're known to be famous cheaters. But that term third gen, it comes up a lot, and there's another term later on that comes up as well too. But eventually somebody walks into the bar after those guys won't play with him, and it's kind of evident why they won't play. I mean, he shoots 4 darts and they go all in the same spot. It is mentioned that he is proficient with tons of different weapons. I think his mom and dad brought it up. But eventually this girl walks out of the bar. We find out it's this girl named Enja Boshows, or he just calls her Joanna. As you can see right here, because he kind of stops what he's doing, pulls up all her social media stuff, and he kind of heads to the bathroom. While he's trying to head to the bathroom, all of a sudden a commotion happens at the door. There's somebody trying to get in the bar. They're denying him access, and he's like, "No one's gonna stop me from getting to Crossjack." And it's this guy named Hodag. I think it's it's Hodag, Hodag. But supposedly we find out he is an old nemesis of Crossjack. And he has come, and instantly Crossjack picks up a shield. He goes to town. He's like, "Hodag, what are you doing? What did you think was going to happen? You're going to rampage out of town. I was just going to beat your ass." While he is beating Hodag, he throws a couple punches and a kick and a shield smash, and Hodag is like, well, I'm just trying to tell you," and he specifically says, but Jack, I just come to see you, and so I gotta tell you about this place I went. Before anything else goes down, people grab Jack Xavier. Charles Xavier's long lost cousin, Jack Xavier, and they take their part, they blame it on him, the whole bar fight, even though it was that guy Hodag that bust down the door. They eventually grab him, throw him out of the bar. Enja is waiting outside before he can get mad and try and go get with the other guys. But yeah, we jump over to this other scene. We find out Enja has her own restaurant. They kind of showed it on the social media stuff. They have a conversation about how they used to be intertwined, how their lives went so much different, how Enja is actually successful. She has a restaurant, kids, a husband, that kind of thing, and she actually mentions that she has multiple restaurants. Then they kind of start talking about the whole Hodag thing, and what he's going to do now that he's not part of the team, and the actual team is third gen. But right as they're talking about this, third gen actually lands down. They walk up to Crossjack. He actually gets kind of happy, and he's like, "Hey man, I kind of took care of the situation, that guy Hodag is already behind bars or whatever." And they're like, they walk up to him and they hand him basically a ticket, or let me see what it says. It says, basically you're being served. They're suing him, and it's because he's in violation of what he signed after his termination of being a superhero, and termination of him being a member of the third gen. And supposedly it states that Crossjack is copyright intellectual property of third gen enterprises. Other violations of said contract include solving crimes, battling superhuman villains, non-superhuman villains, or engaging in large-scale events against cosmic or otherwise infinitesimal powerful beings. So basically, you can't be a superhero, we find out all of a sudden. They basically give him the cold shoulder. They get back on their ship and leave. He screams at this girl Neon, which we saw from the cutscene, and she didn't say anything. He's even screaming out her real name, which is Erica. We cut over to the officers taking Hodak into custody, and they're basically kind of like, well, man, what were you thinking? You're in your 50s, you know, you couldn't have gotten so far. And he's like, look, I was just trying to tell Crossjack about this place I found and how it fixed it. I tried to fix the hurt, and then he kind of started, didn't make any sense. He does go off into saying, it hurts, but they kind of do this back and forth where they cut between local man, Crossjack and Inja as they're talking, and we see that the guy Hodak is in the cell and he's kind of in pain. Eventually, we do see Jack Xavier walking home, and he's walking through like a grassy area, as you can see, kind of like here. It's got a road, but there's like grass on the side of it. Or in the rural area of America. But he sees something in the grass. He instantly takes out a dart that he had from the bar. He throws it at whatever was moving in the grass, and all of a sudden, Pepper the Invincible jumps out of the grass. While this is going on, we see that Hodak is in immense pain. Eventually, this red light starts flashing over him, and he's screaming in agony. We do see what he threw the dart at, because he thinks he threw it at Pepper, and Pepper is just invincible. But we do see that it's some kind of like drone or something like that, and it's like he actually hit it, and it's like, I guess, optical sensor or something like that. But we see Jack Xavier just, continue to walk home, and the drone kind of, beep, 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 away from that location now that it can't really see. The book ends with one scene, and it's just this guy, poor Hodak, and he's, he's dead, kind of, bondaged up on the wall with a special delivery message on his chest. There is a article over here from Tim Seeley about why he did this comic and what it means to him, and it's just basically potential. And he's talking back in 1992 when Youngblood hit the stands, Image being a brand new company, and he's talking about what he was going through and what he did to get that comic, even though it wasn't as great as he thought it was, but the potential was there. And yet 30 years later, Image is a huge comic book company now. Okay, so now we flip the book over, and it's basically a old like scene, maybe from a third gen comic or something. We're getting to see Crossjack in action. We get to meet a lot of the other members that showed up to Skull, or basically give him the the servants for the lawsuit or whatever, but I'll name some of them. But we got Cutting Edge, and he's the guys with the claws. We got Softcore, and it's this girl over here. That's the guy with the claws. And Softcore is basically an accident coated her skin with impenetrable polymer. Then we got Air Raider, and he actually sounds pretty cool. Was an Air Force pilot shot down by Russian MiGs who survived by fusing himself with his plane, so he's kind of like an Iron Man, kind of thing. Then we got Big Island. Sacrificed himself to an angry volcano as a boy to save his village, and was rewarded with alien cybernetic technology that gave him the power of the Earth's core itself. And that's this big Hawaiian guy over here. Sounds pretty cool. And then we got the girl that gave him the cold shoulder, Erica, aka Neon, and she basically just shoots neon lasers. And then we got their team commander, and he is named Camo Crusader. He is chosen as the savior of Christian morality and the right to bear arms, but that is the third gen team that Crossjack was with. Eventually, during this issue, their nemesis, or a group of villains, not really their nemesises, but we do find out, we do see Hodak over here. But some other ones are Painkiller, Frightside, Super Rid, and Merciless, and then Hodak, of course. They kind of laugh at Hodak being there, and him, they're like, hey, you just joined third gen, because supposedly that's what this issue is about, is Crossjack just joining the third gens, and then it's kind of like a baptismal by fire. That's what the issue's called. But basically, they beat the crap out of Hodak, the crap out of all of them. They're all just like a bloody mess on the ground. They're like, we saved the day. Crossjack at the end of it, he's kind of like after they do the mission and they beat the hell out of the villains and they presume dead. He's like, who did we save? What was the whole like point of this? And he's like, we look good doing it. We beat the bad guys. Up, time to go. You know, and as you can see, Hodak was still alive, just barely. And that's kind of where this leaves off. There's like some cool art from images of local man. And that's basically it. You get a taste of the where he came from, and my final thoughts is this: it was a really good issue. I didn't know where we were going to get. I knew it was going to be in that style of Youngblood and Cyberforce and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of when Image did that. I was more Max, Pitt, Savage Dragon, that kind of thing. Spawn specifically, but more Max and Pitt even over Spawn, and I liked the whole like jumping out of the superhero realm back in the 90s Image startup, and that's what I was fond of. Even though you could say Max was a superhero, or Pitt, or but they really kind of like just weird off-ball things that were doing good things, kind of thing. So with that being said, like, I can really get into this because it like paints another picture. It's like, what does a superhero do when they're not allowed to do any kind of superheroing anymore? And I think that's what we're going to get to see in this book. I'm pretty sure eventually some kind of catalytic moment will happen, and they'll need Crossjack's help again or something like that, or a new team. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on where this can go, but I do like the whole like humanity part of what would a superhero do if they couldn't be a superhero anymore due to a lawsuit or injury or something like that. It's something you don't see in comics a lot. I mean, there have been moments in comic book history when that has happened, like Batman, the breaking of the Bat, death of Superman. But for a first issue, it was fantastic. I love the whole flip thing. I love that we got to see the past and the present. I love the two style arts that they chose to use for the two different style of comics. But that is my review on this book. I have a lot more reviews coming. I'm going to try and knock out a bunch this week, so be prepared. Put that bell on if you're so inclined. You want to see more reviews. If you got a review that you want me to do from current comics or anything, let me know. And hit me up down below in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. Alright guys, that's what I got for you. Y'all have a great Tuesday.